Welcome to another deep dive. Today
Deep
we're
dive.
going to be talking about Leah Hirsig.
All right.
So we're using her diaries from 1923 and 1924.
Okay.
And so at this time she's with Aleister Crowley.
Right.
And
Yeah, Crowley's really developing his system of thelema at this point. So she is right there with him, sort of like,
Yeah.
experiencing it firsthand.
that was a front row seat to history.
Absolutely. And through these diaries, we get this like window into this like really hidden world of her magical workings and her visions and even just like her daily life.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because we're going to be looking at some specific entries
Yeah.
that deal with something called the war engine
Oh, wow.
and also her evocations of Rahor Quit.
Right.
So the war engine.
Yeah, the war engine. What is that? It sounds pretty intense.
It does sound pretty intense. And it's interesting because the way she writes about it,
Yeah.
in the beginning, it's very fragmented.
Okay.
So like she's getting like pieces of a puzzle, but she doesn't know
Yeah.
what the picture is yet.
Like she's receiving these visions, but she can't quite put them together.
All right.
Yeah.
And there's this recurring image of a dragon
Oh, wow. A dragon. Okay.
and this man
Yeah.
named AUM.
Okay.
And then there's also a lot of references to metal and like force.
Okay. So like raw power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Does she ever seem like afraid of this war engine or the visions?
Yeah, she definitely expresses concern about like being seen using it. So there's this idea that like it shouldn't be taken lightly, this power, and that
Yeah.
it could be misused.
Dangerous. No way.
Well, as her visions kind of evolve, she starts to realize that it's about finding or creating some kind of energy. And she even speculates that the setting for this might be Russia.
Need Russia. Why Russia?
Right, that's intriguing,
Yep.
especially considering what was going on
Right.
in the world at that time. I mean, the Bolshevik Revolution had just happened.
Right.
And there was all this talk about new sources of power,
Yeah.
political and otherwise. So maybe she was tapping into that somehow. Okay, so we've got this war engine, this energy,
Right.
Russia. Is there anything else about these war engine visions that stood out to you?
One thing that's particularly striking is that she believes the energy for this war engine is going to come from a poor family,
Oh, wow.
a woman and a child eating in this like really sparsely furnished room.
That was pretty heavy.
It's a powerful image. And, it raises all these questions about the ethics of drawing power from others, particularly those who are vulnerable.
So along with these war engine visions, she's also doing these evocations of Rahor Quit.
Right.
So who is this deity?
So Ra-Hoor-Khuit is an Egyptian god of war and vengeance, so a very powerful and often destructive force. And her evocations of this god are super intense, full of imagery.
Can you give us an example of like what one of these might look like?
In one entry, she describes this process of consuming cakes of light in order to breed lust and power of lust. Very evocative language.
Yeah, very intense.
Very much so.
Does she talk about doing any specific rituals
Yeah.
as part of these deep?
Yeah, she mentions rituals like the pentagram. And it seems like she's constantly seeking guidance from Ra-Hoor-Khuit in her magical working.
So she's seeking power, guidance, maybe even transformation through these evocations.
It's heavy stuff for sure.
Does she ever express like doubts
Yeah.
or reservations?
That's an interesting point because, she seems very dedicated to what she's doing, but there's this one instance where she seems hesitant about circulating printed copies of ACXX after an invocation.
What is CCX?
So CCXX likely refers to Crowley's Book of the Law Liber AL Veligus, which is really central to Thelema.
Oh, okay. So why do you think she's so concerned about that?
It's hard to say for sure, but, perhaps she felt that the power invoked was just too potent to be shared casually.
Right.
Maybe she thought the text itself could become dangerous after the ritual.
Like a warning label.
Exactly, handle with extreme caution.
Before we move on, I just want to go back to this idea of Russia and the war engine.
Okay.
It just seems like such a specific detail.
It is, yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, Russia was undergoing a massive change at the time. There was this sense of like a new world order emerging.
Right.
So perhaps she saw Russia as like a key player in that transformation.
Like a place that was ripe for change, a place where this power could be harnessed.
It's possible. Or maybe she was picking up on like the anxieties of the time,
Yeah.
the fear of this new power rising in the East.
Oh, interesting.
So it could be a reflection of these like wider societal concerns.
Yeah, like her visions are tapping into something bigger than just her.
Exactly.
So we've got this mysterious war engine, potentially connected to Russia. We've got these intense evocations of Rahor Quit.
Yeah.
It seems like she's on this quest for power and transformation. But there's also these other visions in her diaries that are even more cryptic.
Oh,
These visions involving this man named Arturo Sabatini. Let's talk about those next.
Okay, these visions of Sabatini, they're really something else. Like, they're filled with symbolism and imagery, but they lack this clear narrative thread.
Yeah, it's like she's trying to decipher
Uh,
a message that's just out of reach.
Definitely.
So one of these visions that stood out to me was a vision of a White House
Okay.
bathed in candlelight.
Mm.
And there's this bearded man in blue
Okay.
and a bronze statue.
Mm.
And this feeling of like intense heat.
Yeah, the imagery in that one is so potent. And you're right, there's definitely this sense of like heat and pressure, that White House. You know, it could represent purity or even isolation, with those candles being the only source of light.
And the bearded man in blue, what do you think he represents?
He's a tricky one. You know, blue can symbolize wisdom or spirituality, but it can also represent sadness or melancholy. So maybe he represents a guide.
Yeah.
But there's also this sense of distance, like he's observing rather than participating.
And then what about the bronze statue? Any thoughts on that?
Bronze is interesting because it's often associated with strength and permanence.
Right, like something unchanging.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the White House, we've got the bearded man in blue, we've got the bronze statue. Then there's this vision of a burning man in the desert.
The burning man.
And that's where this figure of NECH is introduced.
This shadowy figure.
Yeah, and he promises to communicate with Sabatini during meditation.
Interesting. So NECH is described as like this black shadow, which often symbolizes the unknown or the subconscious. And this promise of communication during meditation points to this connection to these deeper realms of consciousness.
Like a spirit guide or a messenger.
It's possible. And the fact that he appears in this vision with a burning man, you know, fire often represents transformation or purification. So maybe there's something to that.
Okay. So we got the White House, the burning man, and then there's this third vision that I found really interesting.
Okay.
The island called NAD.
Ah, yes, NAD. This one's strange. She describes men building walls, these large trees, ships carrying materials. It feels like a place of construction, maybe even colonization.
Colonization, why do you say that?
Well, you know, the image of men building walls suggests this desire for control, maybe even separation from the outside world.
Right.
And those ships carrying materials could represent like an influx of resources or even people.
So maybe NAD represents like a new world that she's trying to establish.
That's a really interesting interpretation. It could also represent a psychological space, you know, an inner world that she's constructing as part of her transformation.
Yeah, it's like she's building her own reality.
Exactly.
It's incredible how she was able to translate these fleeting images into words.
I know, it's amazing. It takes a certain kind of mind to do that.
These visions, along with her entries about the war engine and Rahor Queet, really showed just how immersed she was in this world of magic and symbolism.
Absolutely.
It's like she's speaking a different language.
You could say that. And it's up to us as readers to try to understand that language.
It's a fascinating challenge, trying to piece together the fragments of a life lived on the edge of the unknown.
It really is. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, we may never fully understand her intentions or the true meaning of her vision.
Right, but that's part of the allure, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The mystery.
The unanswered
Questions.
keeps us coming back for more.
No. It's easy to get caught up in all the talk of magic and visions and forget that she was a real person living in a specific time and place.
Definitely. She wasn't just a mystic. She was a woman navigating a complex world.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about what life was like for her in Trelly in 1924.
Sounds good.
They were living in France at the time, right?
They were. They were living at a house called Au Cadran Bleu in Chelles.
Okay, and what was their life like there?
Well, it was a mix of creative pursuits and financial struggles and complicated relationships.
Let's start with the creative pursuits.
Okay.
What was she working on during this period?
She mentions a bunch of different projects in her diaries. Sewing, writing, painting. It seems like she was constantly trying to channel her energy into creative outlets.
It makes sense. I mean, living with Crowley.
Yeah.
I imagine that would require a lot of creative energy just to keep up.
I can only imagine.
Did she ever express any frustrations with their lifestyle or with Crowley himself?
Oh, absolutely. She's brutally honest in her diaries about, like, their financial difficulties and his drug use.
Really? Like what kind of things was she writing about?
Well, on June 1st, 1924, she writes, "The daily payment plan is already getting on my nerves."
Wow.
So it's clear that they were, like, living hand to mouth,
Right.
always scrambling for money.
That sounds stressful.
It does.
And what about her frustrations with Crowley?
Well, on June 29th, she writes, "My opinion is that one does not really get a shot at one's complexes until one has managed to eliminate the influences of convention."
It sounds like she felt stifled by their unconventional lifestyle.
Yeah, it seems like she was longing for something more.
Like she's caught between these two worlds, the
Mm-hmm.
world of magic and Thelema, and then the world of like everyday responsibilities. Then there's that entry from July 3rd, where she talks about being afraid to sleep because of Crowley's drug use.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty dark.
It is. She writes, "Noise's strong smell of chloroform, or so I supposed, but sleep is all off. God help me, I don't dare to sleep. I am afraid."
So behind the facade of occultism, there was real human struggles.
For sure.
And their relationship was further complicated by the fact that there was all these people
Yeah.
coming in and out of their lives.
They had a pretty interesting social circle, to say the least.
Yeah, who are some of these people?
She mentions encounters with artists, writers, fellow occultists, even mentions a negress who caused a rumpus at their hotel.
A rumpus at their hotel. I wish she had elaborated on that.
I know, right? But she does mention meeting the artist, Jules Solar, having tea with Montgomery Evans.
Okay, so it's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
One detail at a time.
Now, something else
Yeah.
that stood out to me about these diaries was the number of oaths
Oh, yeah.
that she makes.
The oaths are interesting. It seems like they serve a dual purpose. Like they reflect her dedication to her magical practice.
Yeah.
But they also function as a means of like personal development.
Like she's using them to structure her life.
Yeah, like to create order amidst the chaos.
What are some examples of the kinds of oaths she's making?
Well, some relate directly to her magical work, like an oath relating to her role in the body of God. But others are more personal, like her vow to abstain from smoking.
Yeah.
For a certain period.
She's testing her willpower.
Absolutely.
So, for example, on December 14th, 1924,
Okay.
she writes about repeating an oath that she'd made previously. And she's completely overwhelmed with emotion.
Wow.
She says, "I'm ashamed to say that I was weeping like a baby all the while, but I think the tears have loosened up something that needed to be hit at badly."
And it's a really raw moment.
It is. And it shows you how seriously she took these oaths.
Definitely.
And later that same day, she makes another oath, this time about smoking.
Oh, wow.
She even jokes about how she looks, like a butt that has been lying about for a week.
That's funny.
I know.
It's good to see that she had a sense of humor about it all.
So we've got these oaths, we've got these glimpses into her daily struggles and triumphs, and then there's this overarching theme of transformation.
Right.
She's clearly searching for something more, something beyond the ordinary.
Absolutely. And as we delve further into her diaries, we're going to see how this pursuit of transformation takes on a whole new urgency.
Okay, I can't wait to hear more about that.
It's going to be a wild ride. Buckle up. Yeah. So where do we leave off?
Well, last time we were talking about, her diary entries and how she seems to be kind of caught between these two worlds. One of like the magic and Thelema, and the other of just like everyday life and, relationships.
So as we move into like the latter part of her diary entries, where do we find her?
Well, it's interesting because it's almost like this period between late December 1924 and August of 1924.
Okay.
It's like she's really pushing the boundaries of her magical practice.
She's going deep.
She's going deep, and it's like she's doing all this intense magical work.
Right.
Like there's this sense of urgency to
Her
it.
time is running out.
Yeah, dude. Do you think that's connected to those visions of Sabatini at all?
Maybe, she's trying to make sense of those visions
Oh.
while also grappling with her role in Crowley's thelemic system and her own personal desires. It's a lot.
Yeah. And then in the middle of all this, she decides to undertake this intense 3-day period of magical work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so on December 27th, 1924, she basically declares this personal retreat. She says, "These 3 days are mine. I have 50 francs. I have food in the house. I have charcoal and wood. I have plenty of work to do. It rains. What happens at the end of this 3-day period doesn't matter. Nothing matters now or ever."
Wow, she's drawing a line in the sand.
It seems like it. And she's like really preparing for this. showdown with herself.
What does she do during those 3 days?
It's like she throws herself completely into this work. We see her invoking chaos.
Okay.
She's experiencing like
Yeah.
intense physical sensations.
Yeah.
She goes out dancing one night.
Oh, wow.
She's drinking with
She's trying
friends.
to live.
It's like she's trying to find this balance between the spiritual and the mundane.
Yeah, that's interesting because it reminds us that even, people on a spiritual path are still human. They still have these desires and these struggles.
Right. And so she writes on December 27th, she says, "Am in union with chaos. My whole idea seems to deplete my body absolutely so that I may lose my thoughts. But I am all wrong. I am starved, but I shall start to love tomorrow. There will be no more masturbation. Perhaps there will be insanity or death, but there'll be something if I have to create it myself."
She's going all in.
Yeah.
Like she's willing to risk everything.
And there's also this sense of like defiance.
Yeah, like she's not going to let anything stop her.
And it's interesting too because this is all happening around Christmas.
Right, time that's usually associated with like celebration and togetherness.
But she's choosing to isolate herself.
It's a very conscious choice.
Do you think these evocations of Rahor Quit are connected to what she's going through at this time?
Well, there's a really chilling entry from December 2nd, 1924, where she's seeking guidance from Rahor Quit about how to proceed with the war engine. And the response she gets is, "Work the work of wickedness."
Work the work of wickedness. That's pretty creepy.
It is.
How does she react to that?
It seems to really trouble her. She spends a lot of time thinking about what wickedness means and whether or not she's on the right path. She even wonders if she's mistaken. Hate for love in her pursuit of magical power.
It's a pretty big question.
It is. It's a question that I think a lot of people who are exploring these paths have to grapple with.
And she never really resolves it in the entries that we have.
At least not explicitly.
Which brings us to the fact that her diary entries end very abruptly. In August of 1924.
They just stop.
What happened to her?
It's a mystery. We don't know. Did she disappear? Did she achieve the transformation that she was looking for? Did she give it all up and go live a normal life?
It's just... That's so frustrating.
I know we want answers, but we may never have them.
But maybe that's the point.
Maybe. Her story isn't meant to have a neat ending. Maybe it's supposed to make us think about the mysteries of life and the limits of our understanding.
It's like a reminder that some things are just beyond our grasp.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think Leah Hirsig would want us to take away from her story?
That's a good question. I think she would want us to be bold, to question our assumptions, to embrace the unknown, and to never stop searching for the truth, even if it's elusive.
And maybe to find the beauty in the mystery, to embrace those unanswered questions as part of the journey.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's a fitting tribute, I think, to the legacy of Leah Hirsig, the Scarlet woman, a woman who dared to challenge convention and to embrace the power of the unknown.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the life and work of Leah Hirsig.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope it sparked your own curiosity about the mysteries of the world.
And remember, as Leah herself wrote, perhaps there will be insanity or death, but there'll be something if I have to create it myself. So go out there and create something extraordinary.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Keep exploring. Last time we were talking about, how Leah's really pushing the boundaries of her practice, going deep into these intense magical workings, and it almost feels like time is running out.
Yeah, you can really sense that urgency in her writing.
Right, like she's racing against the clock.
It makes you think back to those visions of Sabatini and those cryptic messages. Like maybe those were connected to what she was going through.
Do you think?
She was trying to...
It's possible. Decipher those visions while also, figuring out her own role in all of this.
And then in the middle of all that, she undertakes this intense 3-day period of magical work.
That's a big one.
So tell me.
About that.
So on December 27th, 1924, she basically declares a personal retreat. She says, "These 3 days are mine. I have 50 francs. I have food in the house. I have charcoal and wood. I have plenty of work to do. It rains. What happens at the end of this 3-day period doesn't matter. Nothing matters now or ever."
Wow. So it seems like she's really, like you said, drawing a line in the sand.
She is. It's like she's getting ready for this major showdown.
With herself.
With herself, exactly.
What does she actually do during those 3 days.
She goes all in. Like, she's invoking chaos. She's having these intense physical sensations. One night she goes out dancing. She's drinking with friends.
So she's really like going back and forth between these two impulses.
Yeah, like the spiritual and the mundane. It's like she's trying to find some kind of balance between those two.
It's so interesting because it shows that even when you're on this like super intense spiritual path, you're still
human.
Yeah, you still have these desires and these needs, these struggles.
Yeah, and she's not afraid to show that.
Yeah.
In her writing.
Like on December 27th, she writes, MSPTD union with chaos. My whole idea seems to deplete my body absolutely, so that I may lose my thoughts, but I am all wrong. I am starved, but I shall start to love tomorrow. There will be no more masturbation. Perhaps there will be insanity or death, but there will be something if I have to create it myself.
It's raw.
Yeah, it's raw. It's honest, and it's also kind of scary.
Definitely, there's a real sense of danger there.
Like she's not afraid of what might happen.
She's willing to face those consequences.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, there's also this like real sense of defiance in her writing.
Absolutely. Like she's saying, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And keep in mind, this is all happening around Christmas time.
Right.
The time when, most people are celebrating with family, being together.
Yeah.
And she's choosing to isolate herself.
That's such a powerful statement.
It is. Like she's rejecting those expectations and forging her own path. So I'm curious about those avocations of Rahor Quid that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Do you think those are connected to what she's going through?
During these 3 days. Well, there's that chilling entry from December 2nd, where she asks Rahur Quid for guidance on the war engine. And the response is, work the work of wickedness.
Work the work of wickedness.
It's unsettling, for sure.
It's really unsettling. How does she react to that?
It seems to really shake her. She spends a lot of time thinking about, like, what does that even mean? What is wickedness? Is she on the right path? She even wonders if she's, like, mistaking hate for love in her pursuit of magical power.
It makes you think about how power can corrupt.
Even in a spiritual context.
Yeah, even when you think you're doing the right thing.
You could still be going down the wrong path.
And what's so frustrating is that she never really resolves that question in her diary entries.
At least not in the entries we have.
Which brings us to the fact that her entries just end.
Abruptly.
Yeah, in August of 1924.
Like she just vanishes.
What happened? Did she disappear? Did she achieve this transformation that she was so desperate for?
Did she give up magic altogether and go live a normal life?
We don't know. And that's what's
It's frustrating. We want answers.
It's frustrating. It's also kind of beautiful in a way.
Maybe. That's the point. Like maybe her story isn't meant to have this like neat and tidy ending.
Maybe it's supposed to make us think about these mysteries that we can't explain.
The unanswered questions.
So what do you think Leah Hirsig would want us to take away from her story?
That's a really good question. I think she would want us to be bold.
Yeah.
To question our assumptions.
Right.
To embrace the unknown and to never stop searching for the truth, no matter how hard it is to find.
And maybe to find the beauty in the mystery itself.
Yeah, to embrace those unanswered questions as part of the journey.
I think that's a fitting tribute to Leah Hirsig, the Scarlet Woman. A woman who dared to challenge convention and to embrace the power of the unknown. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the life and work of Leah Hirsig.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope it sparked your own curiosity about the mysteries of the world.
And as Leah herself wrote, perhaps there will be insanity or death, but there'll be something if I have to create it myself. So go out there and create something extraordinary.
Until next time, keep exploring.